and I will kind of just, again, roll my eyes and then go back to my book.
I will say a dwarf law that is above the law. Very interesting.
Some runesmith, likely.
The man you're speaking to, Wrist, he looks a little queasy almost, and he actually stands up, looks at you, Wrist, and says, I'm sorry, I think I'm gonna go change my sleeping arrangements to a different inn."
Oh, you sure you want to do that?
He takes a long look at Vertstedt and he goes, "Yeah, I feel pretty good about that." And he starts heading upstairs. All right. And it is starting to get late in the day, so if y'all are gonna go visit the horse breeder before morning, you need to go now.
Yep. So I will say to Rest. So how did you make out finding the horse for Riemann? Or
Well, if
yes.
if when you see it, it doesn't bite your face off, you'll be in good.
That is good. Did
But
he
found
say
2 big beasties of a horse. Want to speak with you, Verve, about the buyer.
interesting?
I will nod and I will inquire as to details about these horses and the man. Tell me about the man. How do you think he would meet someone of my kind?
You don't have 2 big long ears and a tail and a mane, so I don't know if he'd look at you. But if I was to give an example of what most people would say, they usually would scream and go, "Ah, baby eaten elf," and run away. But he's got horses that could do that anyways. Plus, I'm pretty sure the black one has eaten at least a few babies in its life.
Hey, Wrist, how loud do you say that?
Not very loud.
I'll rephrase that. Were you thinking about being quiet when you said that, or did you just kind of say it? Be honest. Okay. Elf, you notice that when he says that, all of the individuals who seem to be fairly invested in keeping their identity to themselves, 2 of them have turned in your direction.
I will note this, but not look at. I will make a point.
They are being very subtle about it, but you notice because you've been watching them.
Mm-hmm. I will look at Wrist and say, "Thank you for that point, Master Wrist.
You're welcome.
Would you do me one other favor this evening?
Oh, what is it?
Find me another inn."
Oh, you have a thing about the vermin too? All right, we'll go and
Yes.
find a different inn.
So there is vermin.
Verstadt, I think you should go with Master Wrist. And I will close out our account here.
Oh, well, the horse master does need to see you today.
Very
So I'll
well.
go and find you there after we got a place to sleep. How's that?
Yes.
I'll put down my mulled wine on like a coffee table. I imagine there's there.
Okay.
And me and Riss step out. I imagine.
I will head out.
Okay. So, are you going to close out before you leave?
Yes.
Did y'all pay in advance? I forget.
Yes, we did.
Okay. The man looks almost kind of desperate. And he's like, "There aren't any vermin here, I can assure you."
I will get close. Not enough to like allow him to kind of peer in. And I will say, perhaps not the small kind, but there are, and I will kind of motion with my eyes, others.
He actually gets notably offended looking. And he says, "This is a fine establishment, I'll have you know.
It
with
is,
perfectly
it
normal
is.
guests. and ever since you three have arrived, you've been doing nothing but hurting my business.
So we shall take ourselves somewhere else so that your establishment may recover. Have a good day.
He scowls very heavily at you as you leave.
And I will head off to the breeder. I'm going to
Roll a perception check.
because I was gonna backtrack and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, first roll me a perception check.
Bonuses or anything?
No, it's a straight roll.
I'll re-roll it.
Okay. As you're walking, you keep glancing behind you, and you feel fairly confident that no one is following you.
I will still make sure. So I'll do all the tricks. I'll stop, check over my shoulder. I'll double back, and then keep going.
Okay.
So it'll take me a little bit longer to get there, but I'm going to make sure.
Let me think for a second.
Stealth urban.
Yes, thank you. Yes, roll an urban stealth check. All right. You still feel confident that no one's following you.
Okay. And I will make my way. As I make my way there, I want to kind of pull my robes in close. I want to kind of set myself up high, get a noble-esque bearing as I continue on the road.
Okay, and where are you heading?
To Wrist's breeder.
Okay.
That he found.
Wrist, where are you in Vertstat going?
I'm gossiping around to find a good inn that isn't the Harpy's Talon Inn.
Okay, roll a gossip.
Rerolling that.
What? You don't want to stay somewhere where there's actually vermin?
Yeah,
right.
I'd like to not be living above the Skaven Den.
You do find out pretty quickly that pretty much all of the really nice inns on this side of town have filled up due to a recent surge in people coming in for the upcoming hunt, because word has started to spread around the Reichland about it. And there are, of course, people who are also starting to come in who are very slowly starting to make preparations for the Falls End Festival. That being said, if you head to more of the poorer side of town, over north of the Temple District and the Academy, there are some fairly middle income establishments you can stay at that are not super beloved per se, but they are known to be secure, and the food and drink is not bad.
I picked the one furthest away from the docks.
All right, you're going to end up at the Hairy Troll's Foot Inn Tavern.
Wow, they suck at naming.
Welcome to fantasy.
I will, after being informed of this, stand in front of the door and say, "How many inns are named after trolls in this place? The Pickled Troll, the Hairy Troll. Are we going to be finding the Stony Troll and the Wet Troll here too?"
I hope there's not a hairy troll inside.
That would be an interesting sight.
As you walk into the establishment, there is a monster of a man behind the bar counter, and both of you kind of freeze because when you look at him at first glance, especially when he's facing away from you, you have a moment where you do legitimately believe that maybe he is an actual hairy troll that the inn is named after. But when he turns around, he has a surprisingly joyful demeanor for a face. But the rest of his body is disturbingly covered in hair.
Good evening to ya.
He looks down and goes, "Ah, it's a wee little halfling. Look at it."
I will blush and shift my feet. Oh, it's nice to meet someone friendly.
He nods and says, of course, welcome to the Hairy Troll. What can I do for you lads?
Oh, well, I had heard that you had still had some rooms available.
He laughs, and you notice that his stomach visibly shakes every time he laughs. And he goes, of course, I've got room for 2 more.
Call it 3. Got a friend that's not with us, as it were.
He nods and says, separate rooms or together?
At least I will look to Vertstedt. Did you want to split the room or get them all separate?
I was thinking, Rist, maybe perhaps you would like to sleep in the same room as me tonight?
I give his neck a dirty look. Let's all get separate rooms.
He looks back and forth between the two of you for a moment and says, well, that'll be fine then. It's hold on a second. He laughs and says, it's 3 brass a night for the stay right now. Well, thankfully, we're not too filled up yet, so y'all pretty much have the run of the place. If you need any
sure
food,
it'll fill
just...
up quick.
He's like, if you need anything, just let me know.
All right, I need 2 meals.
He nods and says, I can have that right out for you. Do you want he kind of, how would he say it? He says, would you like it the piping hot meal, or would you prefer the more, let's say, conservative option?
Let's try both. Vertstedt, did you want something to eat too?
First I will laugh and say, I would love one of those piping hot meals you have, sir.
He nods and says, for your first meal being here, I'll put it on the house. You gotta pay for drinks, though.
It's very generous of you.
He chuckles and says, well, I want to make sure you enjoy your stay here, so maybe I see you again. And he gives you both a wink and then goes to start preparing the food.
This man is so nice.
I look around the empty inn tavern.
Okay, it's not as nice as the Harpy's Talon was. There's definitely some cobwebs up in some various corners. The hearth looks like it hasn't been lit, and it's still like very full of various ash and soot. If you had to guess, it almost looks like this guy is probably here by himself. It doesn't seem like he has any staff, at least right now.
And there's no one else staying here, at least in like the main room?
No, it seems empty.
Okay. And how much did we pay for the rooms?
3
brass.
3 brass.
Okay.
It's 3 brass a night. All right. Anything else?
Yep, I go and take a look at the rooms we got while he gets the meals ready.
Okay. You walk in and they're all right. The beds are actually made of better material than you were worried. They're not just like pure straw beds. They actually have light cloth over them and they seem fairly nice. Everything seems a little dusty. And the windows are definitely kind of dirty and have like smudges and stuff on them. But the floors seem relatively clean. You don't see any bugs or rodents or anything. And it's based on where it is in the city. It's actually surprisingly nice. Because you have a fair amount of shade being cast on you from larger buildings all around. But you don't have a scenic view out the window or anything. All you can see is an alley.
Alright. Is there latches on the windows and door?
There is.
Alright. And they look like they can withstand a minor amount of force?
I would put an emphasis on minor, but yes.
Alright. Good enough for me. I will head back down and enjoy my hearty meal.
I also go check out my room, and I do an inspection. So I go up to the window and I make sure it's locked, closed and locked. I check under the bed, see if there's anything unusual, like any mouse holes or anything like that.
Nope.
A bat hanging upside down.
Of course.
Bloodstains from the last person who slept there.
Nope.
Uh-huh.
If someone's died in there, he covered it up nicely. But yeah, everything looks decent. And when y'all get your food, the piping hot food, he basically brings out some surprisingly well-made strudels. Halfling, you can tell from the ingredients that this man is not suffering for skill, he's suffering for quality of ingredients. But it's edible.
I will bemoan the fate of poor quality ingredients with him.
He is amused by your antics and offers. He actually, he's fairly tactful about it, but he pretty much upfront offers you a job as a chef.
Got a job right now, but thanks for the offer. I'll think of it if I ever want to get out of what I'm in.
He nods and says, I understand. Appreciate you hearing me out.
But considering what you had to work with, this is rather good.
He appreciates the praise, but now we're going to go check in with the elf. Verve, you arrive, it's past dusk now, and you arrive at the stables just in time to pretty much see them putting up all the horses for the night. But one of the stable hands gets one good look at you and kind of, he whistles.
I will lean on my staff.
Right.
I won't lean on it. I'll stand as tall as I can with it.
Okay. He lets out a peculiarly pitched whistle, and a fairly wrinkled but strong-looking man comes striding out and approaches you. And he nods, stopping a good few paces away from you, and says, "How can I help you?"
I am the envoy for Sir Raymond Perquin. I believe you met my halfling friend earlier today.
He raises an eyebrow and says, "Huh, the halfling was telling the truth. You are a woman."
Is that an issue?
He shrugs and says, "Not an issue, just unusual."
Well, Sir Raymond is unusual, asking me to do this task for him.
He chuckles and raises an eyebrow at you and says, "Are you a writer of some sort?"
No,
He kind of
but
pauses
he,
for a
he
minute.
believes in my ability of perception. So I will attempt to do the best that I can in finding him his replacement steed.
When you say perception, his eyes kind of wander over to your staff and he nods very slowly. And then he kind of like squints his eyes a little bit and says, "I'm sorry, what did you say your occupation was?"
I didn't say, but if you must ask, I have a. I'm trying to figure out how I can say it.
Tendency to kill people wearing metal.
It's on the tip of my tongue what I want to say, and it's just not coming to me.
Well, then find another way.
I am both a scholar and a practitioner of the magical arts. I hope that does not alarm you.
He doesn't seem particularly alarmed by it. He just sort of nods as if in like, oh, like he seems to have I was right look to his face. And then he says, "You're not one of them amber wizards, are you? One of the beast wizards?"
No.
He goes, good. Then we should get along swimmingly."
You have an issue with the brothers in brown?
He raises an eyebrow and says, "Have you ever tried to sell an animal to someone who can talk to them?"
I will kind of like turn or like tilt my head and say, "No, I don't believe I ever have," and I automatically see the difficulties.
He nods and says, "Come on in. I'll show you the two steeds we were looking at."
I will nod and follow.
He looks back at you while you're walking, and he kind of nods and says, "So are you Bretonian as well? I don't recognize your accent."
I'm from the same general region, you could say.
He nods kind of offhandedly and says, "You're pretty tall for a lady. No offense."
None taken.
He arrives at the first stable and says, "Here she is."
All right. What do I see? 'Cause I think I missed part of some of your descriptions of the
Yeah, that's fine.
horses.
So looking into the first stable, you see a fairly large horse. She's not colossal, but she's bigger than any of the horses that you've ever seen in Athel Lauren that weren't like magically charged or unicorns or something. And she's got like a swirling brown and white coloration to her fur that creates a pretty interesting set of markings. And the hair, like her mane and around her hooves, is white. And then you can tell when she kind of looks at you. There's I wouldn't say anxious, but there's a very cautious air to it. Like the horse stands up when it sees you, not terribly quickly, but it stands up very deliberately and seems to be watching you very carefully.
All right. First thing I want to do is I want to do a perception check to see the way it stands, the way it like moves.
Okay.
I want to see like if there's any like slight limp, anything of that nature.
Okay. Traditionally, it would be best to roll an animal care check or animal, whatever the other one is. But you can
Charm animal.
nah, I guess it would be animal care. But you can roll a perception in this case, but you will take a -20 penalty because you're not familiar with horses. You don't detect anything of concern, but you feel very not confident about what to look for. It looks normal, I guess.
And I will turn to the man and say, "And how old is she?"
He kind of nods his head her direction, says, "About 3, I reckon. If I had to guess, we got her in a trade from people passing through selling horses that they capture off some of the plains down south."
And who attended to her training to be a war steed?
He kind of grabs his own. He kind of like grabs both hands at the top of his vest near his neck, and he says, "Yours truly."
And I don't mean to be rude or insulting. What background do you have in such events?
He goes, "Oh, I understand. Maybe." He goes, "Sorry, I understand. I forgot to give you my name. How rude of me. I am. I'm. 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 He goes, "I'm Sebastian. Sebastian of the. Oh gosh, what's the thing for it? He goes, I'm. There we go. He goes, I'm Sebastian Wertherson." And he waits expectantly for a reaction.
Can you repeat his name?
Sebastian Wertherson.
I will nod and say I do apologize from not being around this area. Can you give me some more detail? Is that are you an accomplished?
He deflates a little bit, and sighs, and says, "It's fine. I've been breaking, taming, and raising horses for I'd probably say about 40 years now, as did my pa and his pa before him.
Did any of your ancestors serve as mounted men?
He shakes his head and says, "No, we catch and tame the horses traditionally. Is how my great pa started. But I'll have you know that one of my father's steeds went on to be a mount for the Elector Count of Mindenheim, no less. The Graf himself." Once again, he
Truly.
waits for praise.
What an accomplishment.
He nods at this and says, "Of course, I am seeking to hopefully achieve such a feat myself. I've sold many fine mares and steeds, but none of them in particular have gone on to any great fame, though none of them have ended up as disasters either, so I suppose I should count my blessings."
Now, Bretonians are very picky people. The pedigree of this horse is in question because you got it off of a trade.
He nods and says, "True, unfortunately, it's a bit of a wild creature. I can't give you any particular records about its parenting. From what I understand, it was just what are they called? Colts, baby horses."
Mm-hmm, yeah.
He's like, he says it was just a colt when she got brought in, and she was out in the wilds before that.
I will nod.
But she's reliable,
and-
and she's well tempered. I will say that. Takes orders
And-
real well, even from a new rider.
and cautious.
He looks at her and he kind of pauses for a time and says, "I would say she's more... This one thinks." And he looks at her for a long time and says, "Maybe a little too much, to be honest."
I will nod and say, do you have any others that I might compare?
He nods and says, "Of course, right this way. Though, milady, I would highly recommend you please don't lean into the enclosure."
I will nod.
He walks you to the end of the row, and as you see that one of the gates has been splintered outward noticeably, and when you look inside, you see in the corner resting is a colossal black horse that's got white tufts of fur on all just above its hooves on each foot, and it's the bottom of its face is also white with a streak that goes up between its eyes, and it is incredibly muscular and just colossal in size. It is a big damn horse.
Again, I want to try a perception on it.
Okay.
So that's 2 success levels.
Okay, and that's with the -20.
Yes.
Okay. As you look at it, you can tell it's a beast is probably the best description. This thing is very strong looking. You are able to detect what you think are probably a few scars on its body, but they all look like they've healed pretty well. It doesn't seem to have any overt or terrible injuries.
I will nod and again ask its age.
He nods at it and says, "She's about 4, I reckon." And as the two of you are talking, its eyes open and it focuses on you, and it very quickly climbs to its feet and starts to kind of back up a little bit, and you hear it huffing audibly. And he kind of backs away a step and says, "Yeah, you might want to step back a few steps."
Can I do like a charm animal to like change, like without touching it? Is there like certain people I've noticed they'll look at an animal a certain way to kind of calm it down from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Can I attempt that with a charm animal?
Let me double check something real quick.